You know, when you think about the billions of dollars worth of stuff floating across the ocean at any given moment, you have to wonder what holds it all together. Well, it turns out there's this invisible legal code, a set of rules that basically runs our entire global economy. Let's let's dive into this hidden world. So, take a look at this. It might seem like just a bunch of paperwork, right? But the rules behind a document just like this one, they are the absolute foundation of global trade. I mean, from the phone in your hand to the coffee you drank this morning, the principles here have touched pretty much everything you own. Okay, so let's get right to the heart of it. Picture this. A massive storm hits a container ship, and a container full of valuable goods goes right over the side. Who pays for that? Is it the shipping company's fault, the person who sent the stuff, or is it just, tough luck? This exact high-stakes problem is what this whole legal framework was built to solve. So, in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly how it all works. We'll start with that big question, then we'll look at the story behind these rules, what the shipping companies have to do, and when they can get out of trouble. Then we'll get into the real cost, and finally, why these unseen rules are so incredibly important for all of us. The answer to that billion-dollar question, it lies inside a framework called the Carriage of Goods by Sea Act, or COGA for short. Now, different countries have their own versions, but they all come from the same international rulebook. And that rulebook is all about balancing the responsibility between the people shipping the goods and the companies carrying them. But here's the thing. These rules didn't just pop up overnight. Nope. They're the result of almost 100 years of countries working together, kind of like a handshake across oceans, to build one single predictable system that everyone can use. And you can see that journey right here. It's a story of this slow, steady, global agreement. It all kicked off way back in 1922 in Brussels and got tweaked and updated over the decades to keep up with new technology and how we trade, leading us to the rules we have today. Okay, so what do these rules actually say? Let's start with the promises the shipping company, what the law calls the carrier, has to make before their ship even leaves the dock. These are their core responsibilities. It all revolves around this incredibly important document, the Bill of Lading. Now, this isn't just some receipt. It is so much more. It's the contract, it's the proof of what's on the ship, and it's basically the proof of ownership. Kind of like the deed to a house, but for cargo. It is the legal heart of the whole operation. The law really boils the carrier's main job down to this pretty simple checklist. Before and at the start of any trip, they have to use what's called due diligence. That just means they have to do everything reasonably possible to make sure the ship is seaworthy, that it has the right crew and supplies, and that the cargo holds are clean and safe for whatever they're about to carry. And their job doesn't stop there. It's not just about the ship itself. The carrier has to carefully manage the cargo for the entire journey, from the second it's loaded to how it's stored on board, all the way to the moment it's unloaded at the other end. They're responsible for that cargo every step of the way. But what if they do all of that and something still goes wrong? Well, this is where the other side of the deal comes into play. These are the carrier's escape clauses, and they're what makes the whole system balanced. This really shows you the core logic of the law. Article 3 lays out what the carrier promises to do. Then Article 4 gives them protection in return. Basically, if they can prove they did their due diligence, they're often off the hook for any loss or damage. It's a legal balancing act. So, what are these protections? Well, there's a whole list. The carrier isn't responsible for things like mistakes in navigating the ship, or fires they didn't cause, or what the law calls perils of the sea. Think totally unforeseeable monster storms. It also covers acts of God and even hidden problems with the ship that they couldn't possibly have found. And the list keeps going with things that are just way outside the carrier's control. Things like wars, strikes, or quarantines. And this is a big one. It also covers problems caused by the shipper themselves, like if they packed their goods badly, or if the goods had some kind of built-in flaw, like fruit that was always going to spoil no matter what. All right, so let's say the carrier messed up. They did not do their due diligence, and they're found to be at fault. So how much do they have to pay up? Well, it's not a blank check. The law actually sets very specific limits on this. Exactly. When the carrier is finally on the hook, what's the actual damage? What's the final price tag? The answer, and you might find this a little weird, comes down to this very, very specific number, 666.67. But that's not dollars or pounds or euros. It's a special unit called a special drawing right.
Yeah, an SDR, or special drawing right. The easiest way to think about it is like a global currency that was created by the International Monetary Fund. Its value is based on a whole basket of major currencies: the dollar, the euro, the yen, and so on. Using SDRs just makes sure the liability limit is stable and means the same thing all over the world, no matter how exchange rates bounce around. So here's how they figure it out. The carrier's liability is capped at either 666.67 SDR for each package or 2 SDR per kilogram. The court just uses whichever of those two numbers is higher. This creates a really predictable cap on how much they could lose, unless, of course, the shipper paid extra to declare a higher value for their goods from the start. So, after all these technical rules, why does any of this matter so much? Well, because when you understand this stuff, you start to understand the very foundation of how everything moves around our planet. This quote right here from the international rules, it's incredibly powerful. What it's saying is that a shipping company can't just write a contract to get out of its basic duties. The rules are the rules, period. This protects the little guy, the person shipping the goods, from a huge company that could otherwise write a totally one-sided contract. It completely levels the playing field. And in the end, that's what it all comes down to: predictability. Everyone, everywhere on Earth knows the basic rules of the game. It lets businesses calculate their risks, get insurance, and confidently send stuff across oceans. And that stability, it keeps shipping costs reasonable, which affects the price of almost everything you buy. It is truly the essential software that runs the hardware, the ships, the cranes, the containers of global trade. And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. We depend on this century-old legal code every single day, whether we realize it or not. It's the invisible engine of our entire economy. So you have to ask yourself, in a world that's only getting more complicated, what happens if that code starts to break?